Most of what you know about history wasn't learned in a classroom. It was absorbed through the flicker of a movie screen in a darkened theater. Hollywood is a dream factory, and unfortunately, the truth is often too boring, too complicated, or too messy for a three-act structure. We've been conditioned to believe in horned Vikings, lawless cowboys, and silent sword draws because they make for better posters. But these myths have effectively erased the ingenious, organized, and often surprising reality of our ancestors. In this video, we are dismantling 10 of the most persistent lies ever told by cinema, proving that the real past is far more fascinating than anything a screenwriter could ever invent. Number 1. The bowler hat cowboy. If I ask you to draw a cowboy, you will sketch a rugged man in a wide-brimmed Stetson hat. This is the ultimate symbol of the American West, cemented by John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. However, if you were to step into a time machine and land in a dusty frontier town in 1875, you would see a sea of bowler hats. Also known as the Derby, this round, stiff, polite-looking British hat was the actual king of the Wild West. Butch Cassidy, Billy the Kid, and Bat Masterson, the deadliest men in the territories, all preferred the bowler. The reason was purely practical. High-crowned Stetsons were expensive status symbols that blew off easily in the high winds of the open plains. The bowler, however, sat low and tight on the head, was nearly impossible to knock off during a gallop, and was incredibly durable. In the 19th century, the Stetson boss of the plains was a luxury item for wealthy ranchers, while the average working cowboy wore whatever was cheap and functional. Hollywood swapped the bowler for the Stetson because a round banker-style hat didn't look heroic enough for a silver-screen gunslinger. We've traded historical truth for a fashion statement that John Wayne could be proud of. Number 2. The Iron Maiden theme park attraction. The Iron Maiden is the most terrifying object in any medieval torture museum, a spiked iron sarcophagus designed to slowly impale a screaming victim. It is the ultimate proof that the Middle Ages were a time of sheer, unchecked cruelty. But here is the problem. The Iron Maiden never existed. There is not a single mention of such a device in any medieval text, court record, or illustration. It is a 19th century hoax cobbled together by showmen who wanted to capitalize on the Victorian obsession with the barbaric past. The first Iron Maidens were built in the late 1800s using scrap metal and old armor pieces. They were designed specifically for traveling freak shows and chambers of horrors to lure in paying tourists. Real medieval torture was certainly grim, utilizing the rack, the strappado, and thumbscrews, but it was usually a regulated legal process intended to extract confessions, not a theatrical execution in a spiked coffin. Victorian entrepreneurs realized that accurate history didn't sell enough tickets, so they invented a monster. Hollywood saw the prop, thought it looked cool, and has been terrifying audiences with a 19th century tourist trap ever since. Number 3. The Pyramid Labor Union. Every biblical epic and desert adventure movie shows the Great Pyramids being built by hundreds of thousands of starving slaves whipped into submission by cruel Egyptian overseers. This narrative is a pillar of Western storytelling, but modern archaeology has completely demolished it. Excavations of the Workers' Village at Giza have revealed that the pyramid builders were not slaves, but highly skilled, well-compensated laborers who took immense pride in their work. These men weren't living in squalor. They slept in purpose-built dormitories and were fed a high-protein diet of prime beef and fish. Perhaps most surprisingly, they were paid in a combination of bread and roughly 4 to 5 liters of beer per day. This wasn't the weak beer we know today. It was a thick, nutrient-rich fermented porridge that provided the calories necessary for heavy lifting. Graffiti found inside the pyramids shows work crews with names like the Friends of Khufu Gang and the Drunks of Menkaure. Slaves don't form gangs and name them after their kings. The pyramids were a massive national public works project, essentially the ancient version of the Hoover Dam, built by people who were treated as essential national assets, not disposable property. Number 4. The invisible ninja. The image of the ninja in a skin-tight black bodysuit is so pervasive that it's hard to imagine them any other way. We see them as shadow warriors who are invisible in the night. However, if you were a covert operative in feudal Japan, wearing a black leotard is the fastest way to get caught. Against a moonlit sky or a natural landscape, solid black creates a stark, sharp silhouette that is easily spotted by guards. Real shinobi were spies, not gymnasts. Their primary uniform was boring. A real ninja dressed as a farmer, a merchant, a wandering monk, or a street performer. Their greatest weapon wasn't a sword, it was the ability to walk past a guard without being noticed. The black suit myth actually comes from kabuki theater. In Japanese drama, stagehands, kuroko, dressed in all black to tell the audience, "Ignore me, I am invisible while I move the props." When a playwright wanted a ninja character to sneak up on a hero, they would dress the actor as a stagehand to surprise the audience. Over time, Western viewers saw these plays and assumed that was the actual military uniform. A ninja in a black suit isn't a warrior, he's a stagehand who forgot to change. Number 5. The T-Rex movement myth. One of the most intense scenes in Jurassic Park occurs when Dr. Grant tells everyone to freeze because the T-Rex's vision is based on movement. If you don't move, it can't see you. While it makes for a legendary cinematic moment, it is scientifically catastrophic advice. Paleontological studies of the T-Rex's skull and brain cavity suggest that the Tyrannosaurus rex likely had some of the best eyesight in the history of the planet. The T-Rex possessed forward-facing eyes, giving it a binocular vision range of 55 degrees, wider than that of a modern hawk. Research indicates its visual acuity was potentially 13 times better than a human's, meaning it could see objects clearly from nearly 4 miles away. In the real world, if you stood perfectly still in front of a T-Rex, it wouldn't just see you, it would see you, smell you with its massive olfactory bulbs, and wonder why its lunch was being so cooperative. Steven Spielberg needed a way for his heroes to survive a close encounter, so he stripped a super predator of its greatest sense. Great for the box office, but a death sentence in the Cretaceous. Number 6. The dirty Middle Ages. Hollywood loves the mud and filth aesthetic for the Middle Ages. Peasants are always covered in soot, teeth are black, and nobody has seen a bathtub in a decade. This Dark Ages stereotype suggests that humans simply forgot how to wash themselves for 1,000 years. The truth is that medieval people were obsessed with hygiene. Public bathhouses were the social hubs of European cities, functioning much like modern spas. In fact, there were more public bathhouses in 13th century Paris than there are in modern Paris today. People washed their hands and faces every morning and before every meal as a matter of basic etiquette. They used soap made from wood ash and animal fat, and they used chew sticks, early toothbrushes, with mint or cinnamon to keep their breath fresh. The idea that everyone was filthy actually comes from the 16th and 17th centuries, the Renaissance, when a plague-scared medical community erroneously suggested that hot water opened the pores to miasma, or bad air. The dirty medieval peasant is a myth created by later generations to make themselves feel more civilized. In reality, a 12th century knight was likely cleaner than a 17th century king. Number 7. Walking the fictional plank. Every pirate movie features a scene where a blindfolded captive is forced to walk the plank into shark-infested waters. It is the signature execution of the golden age of piracy. However, there is almost zero historical evidence that pirates ever used the plank. Pirates were criminals, but they were also businessmen. They didn't have time for theatrical, slow-motion executions. If they wanted you dead, they were much more efficient.
The most common pirate punishment was marooning, leaving someone on a deserted sandbar with a bottle of water and a pistol, or the terrifying keel hauling. Keel hauling involved tying a rope around the victim and dragging them under the ship's hull, where the razor-sharp barnacles would shred their skin to the bone. The walk the plank myth was popularized by 19th-century novelists like Robert Louis Stevenson and J.M. Barrie. It was a literary invention designed to be dramatic for children's books, not a reality of the Caribbean. Real pirates were far more brutal and far less theatrical than Captain Jack Sparrow.
Number 8. The Gladiator Athlete. In the movies, every gladiator match is a fight to the death. The loser falls, the crowd screams, and the emperor gives a thumbs down to signal the final blow. But gladiators weren't disposable slaves. They were high-value professional athletes. Training, feeding, and housing a gladiator was an astronomical investment for a lanista, manager. If a gladiator died in every fight, the industry would have gone bankrupt in a week. Statistical analysis of arena records shows that roughly 90% of gladiators survived their matches. Most fights ended when one warrior was too exhausted or wounded to continue, at which point a referee would stop the bout. As for the thumbs down, historians believe the signals were likely reversed. A thumbs up, towards the throat, might have signaled the mercy blow, while a thumb tucked into the fist represented mercy. Gladiators had endorsement deals, fan clubs, and even specialized medical care. They were the NFL players of the Roman world, and killing them off was considered a terrible waste of talent. Number 9. The lawless but gun-controlled West. Westerns portray frontier towns like Tombstone and Dodge City as lawless no-man's lands where everyone carried a six-shooter and duels happened at high noon. The reality is that the Wild West had stricter gun control than most modern American cities. When you entered a major frontier town, the first thing you saw was a sign requiring you to surrender your firearms to the sheriff or the local hotel. The legendary gunfight at the OK Corral didn't happen because of a blood feud. It happened because the Earp brothers were trying to enforce a local ordinance that prohibited carrying weapons within town limits. Homicide rates in these towns were surprisingly low. Dodge City, at its wildest, averaged only 1 or 2 murders per year. Cowboys spent their time branding cows and sleeping in the dirt, not getting into high-noon shootouts. Hollywood created the lawless West because a movie about a man enforcing a local no-weapons policy while wearing a bowler hat doesn't sell popcorn. Number 10. The Braveheart wardrobe disaster. Braveheart is a cinematic masterpiece, but as a history lesson, it is pure fantasy. Mel Gibson's William Wallace wears a kilt and blue face paint while fighting the English. Here is the problem. Kilts didn't exist in 1300. The belted plaid kilt didn't appear in Scotland until the 16th century, and the tailored kilt we know today wasn't invented until the 18th century. Wearing a kilt in 1300 would be like showing a movie about the American Civil War where the soldiers are wearing hoodies and sneakers. The blue face paint, woad, is even worse. That was a tradition of the Picts, a tribe that lived 1,000 years before Wallace was born. Wallace himself was a lowland knight, likely of Norman descent, who would have fought in a suit of chainmail and a tunic, looking more like a French knight than a forest barbarian. The film also features a romance with Princess Isabella of France, who was roughly 3 years old and living in France when Wallace was executed. Braveheart is a great story about freedom, but every visual detail in the film is a lie designed to make the Scots look like underdogs against the polished English. We live in a world where cool has officially replaced correct. From the round hats of the real West to the beer-drinking professionals who built the pyramids, the real story of humanity is often hidden beneath layers of cinematic paint and Hollywood ego. The next time you see a gladiator die or a ninja vanish in a puff of smoke, remember that you're watching a myth. The real past was more organized, cleaner, and much more clever than we give it credit for. If you want to keep peeling back the layers of history's greatest lies, make sure you're subscribed,
because the truth doesn't need a stunt double.